All right, it's hard to tell 30, 40-minute stories in just 15 minutes. So I'm going to kind of summarize or set up here, and I've got Todd Rumsey, who is the president of No Kill Williamson County, on the line, as well as Nathan Winograd, who is a Stanford Law School graduate, a criminal prosecutor, and an author and director of the National No Kill Advocacy Group. When we last left off with you, Todd, I'll start with you. They weren't really enjoying your presence at the Williamson County shelter, you were trying to simply adopt a dog that they obviously didn't want to adopt you because of some of the stances that you have taken. Not the least of which I would agree with, that we can do better than just force birthing puppies and then throwing them in a trash can. About the only action that's taken place since then was they covered the windows where that procedure is done. There has been less than, in my opinion, forthright behavior from Doug Brightwell, who is over this particular operation, as well as the mayor, who claimed he had no knowledge of what was happening with the adoption you were trying to do, when in fact he was at the shelter. So there's been a lot of shenanigans and less than the standards that I think we should have. What has happened since?
Well, thank you for having me on the show this morning, Michael. I really appreciate it. And one thing I want to make clear right off the bat, with the original story back in March with Mallory, we just found out this week that Mallory is now safe. She's in a very good rescue within our community, a dog rescue. So somewhere along the line, she has been transferred from the original rescue that Director Brightwell handpicked, which I think, if you remember right, we specifically pointed out they were not a dog rescue, they were a cat rescue. And now she's safe. Her puppies appear to be safe. And I just learned...
So all's well for Mallory, Todd, but it doesn't change that all's not well at the shelter, because you went to adopt her, you paid for her, then they said you couldn't have her, she was already adopted when she was still sitting in the kennel, and others witnessed her still in the kennel. There's still shenanigans, and there's still some people over there that don't like you and don't like the no-kill philosophy.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And what we learned shortly after the Mallory case was that there was yet another example of a horrendous incident. Female by the name of Cheyenne, beautiful golden retriever lab mix, and late-term pregnancy, has to be carried into the vet's office at Williamson County Animal Control. They remove her 11 puppies, and the puppies are killed. And all of this happening when we've made it clear that we have resources, that we can foster these animals, we can offload them from the shelter, we can offload that taxpayer's expense of these procedures, and most importantly, we can save the puppies' lives, and these procedures are very dangerous for the female animals on which they're being performed, much to Doug Brightwell coming on the news and telling the community that these are common procedures and they're safe. 3 weeks after that procedure was performed, Cheyenne is dead.
Yeah. Well, Todd, as you know, we're aborting living human beings and throwing them in trash cans in the name of choice. But we're better than this in Williamson County. One other thing, we wanted to correct an article in Sunday's edition of the Williamson AM. They made the false statement, quoting Doug Brightwell, that only you and one other volunteer so far have declined to sign this new policy. What is this new volunteer policy?
We have a volunteer code of conduct policy which has been introduced to us, and it was introduced in March 21st volunteer meeting in which I attended. And the policy, the one statement within this policy says, "I promise not to engage in any communication that will cause harm to the reputation of WCAC."
Yeah, I wonder if that had anything to do with you being on this show or talking to newspapers or carrying out the business of No Kill Williamson County.
One would have to question that.
All right, but that's not even the whole story. The other story is you weren't the only one who refused to sign.
No, I know of many volunteers who have not signed the policy. And so...
Help me understand why I shouldn't begin, even though I've never met either of them, to begin to question the integrity and the word of Mr. Brightwell as well as the mayor of Williamson County, because it's getting very hard throughout this story.
Well, this is a government-run facility. My tax-paying dollars are what they use to operate the facility. And when you put a policy in place that starts to limit the transparency, well, why are you so worried about me causing harm to your reputation if you're doing what's right and if you're operating this government facility within the values of the community?
Bottom line is, Todd, I think what Mr. Brightwell is probably saying is most people would find it horrific to know that our shelters are pulling babies out of dogs and throwing them in trash cans and killing them, and sometimes even the mother, as a practice. I think that's probably what he's saying. Let's get Nathan in here, Winograd. You can use some of your criminal prosecuting skills as well as your heart. Look, Nathan, the bottom line is I love animals. In fact, the more I know people, the more I love animals. And we have a lot of people in Williamson County that love animals, and we know we can't ever achieve zero in terms of euthanization, but we can do better, and we can do as well as other areas in the country that have proven to do better. And one of the clues that success leaves, and I know your organization has, and I know your work with the SPCA has, is that when the community gets involved with its love for animals and they're willing to donate money and donate time and volunteer and certain proven tactics and things that are done. I've done some in Tulsa with the SPCA when I lived there. They work. What does it tell you that the Williamson County Shelter doesn't seem to be interested in this?
Well, it really is shocking, Michael, that here is a government agency, and like all government agencies, it will tell you it doesn't have enough resources to do the job right, and yet you have people like Todd and his team who are willing to save animals at private expense, that they're appear to be committed to killing at public expense, and they turn those people away. And not only do they turn those people away, but they enact retaliatory policies that say if you say anything about the inhumane conditions or other conditions you see in our shelter, we're going to close the door on you. And by setting themselves up as adversaries with the very people who are committed to helping them save all the lives at risk, they actually undermine the efforts to save those lives. And if you look around the country, shelters and animal control agencies and local governments that have embraced the humane values of their community have actually succeeded. There are now roughly 300 cities and towns across America that have ended the killing of healthy and treatable dogs and cats in their community shelters. And the beautiful thing about it is twofold. One, these communities share very little in common demographically. They run the political spectrum. And secondly, they haven't raided the public treasury in order to do that. In fact, in so many ways, saving lives is actually more cost-effective than killing, because killing costs money, and utilizing the private partnerships with people like Todd and his team actually transfers the cost of care from taxpayer to private philanthropy while saving the lives.
Nathan, I'm going to do two things with you. The first one is there a numbers game here? Is not killing enough threatening to their funding? Or do they just not want to deal with it? I mean, I'm trying to figure out the motive of these individuals. I'll give you an example. When I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, because, really the real trick is to get to these spay and neutering mobile type facilities that are very effective, so we can stop the bleeding, so to speak. But what we would do is we got together with Moto Photo and the SPCA. And so we would give people a free portrait sitting with their pet. They would bring dog food. Well, this became very successful to the point where I would do this event once a year, and we literally provided all the necessary dog and cat food for the shelter for the entire year, which freed up their resources to then begin the fundraising process and going for much deeper pockets at the grass top level as well as grassroots to raising money for some of these mobile units. In other words, it was now this was the SPCA and not the community shelter. However, it was still embraced, and they understood it. They loved it, and it met a need, and then they could use their resources to meet an even greater need moving forward. I mean, I just can't cut this cake any way and come up with anything positive to say for the county mayor or Doug Brightwell that they are opposed to people who love animals and are willing to give time and money and proven programs that will save lives. I just can't find a good motive in this opposition, let alone adversarial action.
Well, I think what your mind doesn't want to do, Michael, is go to the two most obvious reasons. And one is that they simply just don't care. So that this is a job, it's not a mission for them, whether they save this dog or save this...
Then they're the wrong people to run this agency.
Well, I think that's absolutely correct. And the bottom line is that shelters across the country do not want to be held accountable by the taxpayers. They want to just take the tax money, operate under a veil of secrecy, and do whatever they want to do, regardless of whether it reflects or hinders the values of the community. I know it probably won't raise my stock much on the show to talk about what we do in California, but sometimes we even get things right.
Yeah, no, I know it happens.
And one of the things that we did was that we passed a law making it illegal for any shelter in California to kill an animal if a qualified private not-for-profit was willing to save that animal. And not only are we saving an additional 46,000 animals a year because of that law, we have saved taxpayers $1.8 million a year in doing that.
I noticed you didn't mention it was the San Francisco area. You didn't want to lose any more credibility, did you?
Right, exactly.
But here's the point, Nathan. That goes back to my original question to you, because you know more about this than I do. I'm beginning to wonder if we love animals more than the government, and we're willing to do more to save their lives than the government, and if, in fact, as we do it, we are saving more lives, maybe we could do this better than them, and we're a threat to them. That's why I say, is it a numbers game? Do they see this as a threat to their funding?
Well, I don't know if they see it as a threat to their funding, but they certainly do see it as a threat to being able to run an agency with little to no accountability.
But, Nathan, that's exactly what happened here. Todd wanted to adopt that dog, and they weren't going to give it to him. They were going to give it to anybody but him. Luckily for Mallory, it worked out. For the other one they aborted, the puppies, all 11, are dead, and the dog is dead. But, you know, they're clearly retaliating against Todd. I mean, I don't even know if that's opinion still. It's a courtroom of public opinion. I guess I can arrive at a verdict. You used to have to convince judges and juries, but I mean, it's the memos. I mean, what they did, what they denied after they did it, covering that wall where the procedure is done, and then coming out with this new policy days after, and I mean literally days after Todd was on this show, let alone featured in the newspaper. Come on, I'm not an idiot.
Well, it's clearly retaliatory. It is also unconstitutional. You know, we have been successful at filing lawsuits around the country when shelters do this kind of policy. You cannot condition the right to volunteer on leaving your First Amendment rights at the door. Not only do you have a right to speak out about the harm that government is committing and the inhumane practices committed by a government shelter, but you have a constitutional right to demand that the government correct those wrongs. It's our First Amendment right both to free speech and to petition our government for a redress of grievances, and clearly the timing suggests that this is definitely a retaliatory policy against its citizens in order to continue doing what it has always done with little to no scrutiny.
Nathan, I'm coming back to you in about less than 60 seconds. Todd, first and foremost, this is quite a policy, right? In other words, volunteer and help us all you want, but just don't tell anybody the horrific things we're doing. I think that says all it needs to say for the mayor and Mr. Brightwell. I do want to ask you one thing. Is the mayor denying any knowledge of this policy as well?
No, not as far as I know. He's not denying.
Well, give him a chance. I'm sure he will. All right. Back to you, Nathan. Why should all of us listening stand behind Todd? Why should all of us who live and call Williamson County our home and care about animals get involved, and what should we do?
Well, you should care, obviously, because they are killing animals in your name. They are using your
money.
Yeah, exactly. They're using your tax dollars to do it, and they're saying they're killing the animals because of you. And here you have the community saying, we don't want you to kill them. We realize that if you save them, you can bring in revenue through adoptions and through transferring the cost of care.